stories of an aircraft builder. Newspaper articles about the work of Achim Engels. An article from the Schorndorf News from 1993 by Christine Pruski. And somehow history is still buzzing around in here. Noisy engines at dizzying heights, icy winds, shots fired at each other, rattling out of the two machine guns on the plane. In addition, there's the constant fear of being hit, shot down and crashing with sirens wailing. Somehow it must have been like this back then during the First World War, when that Red Baron defended German airspace with his fighter plane. Now the same plane stands behind a two-family house on the Mühlbach in Schorndorf. The same Fokker DR-1 152-17, in which the fighter pilot Manfred von Richthofen, known as the Red Baron, sat at the time. There, under the myrtle tree, in the garden next to the garage, the two Schorndorf residents, Achim Engels and Wolfgang Schuster, assembled the single-seat fighter plane with 3 wings. It took the two 19-year-olds almost 4.5 years to recreate the Fokker aircraft. The really outstanding thing about this thing is that it is a true reproduction of the original, emphasizes Wolfgang Schuster. Finding out the tricks that the technician used to build a warplane out of wood, canvas, sheet, aluminum and tubular steel in an old workshop in Schwerin in 1917 was the real problem, says radio and television technician Wolfgang Schuster. From photos, newspaper articles, conversation with eyewitnesses and comparison with plans of similar aircraft, the two deducted the construction plans of the Fokker DR-1 152-17. This collecting, this filtering out the right information from the wrong, so Schuster, is what Achim Engels found one of the most interesting things about the construction. In a sense he agrees with his friend Renate. This is how history is preserved. The history of this one aircraft is carefully documented in around 10 file folders. In contrast, the 19-year-old says, many museums distort history because they exhibit aircraft that are not original replicas, and a far cry from being called reproductions. But this originality, the old, is exactly what fascinated Wolfgang Schuster so much about this work that he spent several hours of his free time every day for years. In his parents' garage and in the workshop behind Achim Engels' parents' electrical store, the two of them worked on the individual parts of the airplane. What drives Achim to spend every evening in the workshop is his love of flying and technology, and somehow, he says, the history is still buzzing around in there. Sometimes, says Achim Engels, there are situations where you are actually in the old factory hall in Schwerin in 1917. When problems arise, you have to put yourself in the shoes of the designer of the aircraft and think about how he solved technical problems almost 80 years ago. You're like a pioneer, adds his friend, nodding in agreement. It has started to rain. Thick drops patter incessantly on the orange-brown striped awning over the balcony on the second floor of the house, and, of course, on the Fokker DR-1 152-17 under the Mirabelle plum tree in the garden. It is only a warm summer rain, and yet the two airplane builders are worried. They have covered the open wooden seat with a tarpaulin, removed the ignition, and carefully balanced the compass, on loan from an instrument collector friend, with both hands up the narrow staircase to the second floor of the house. Hopefully they'll pick up the plane this week, says Wolfgang Schuster, referring to the employees of the Auto and Technological Museum in Sinsheim. The museum, which paid 25,000 marks of the total construction costs of around 32,000 marks, will exhibit the Red Baron fighter plane in a branch in Speyer near Mannheim. The same museum has already placed the next order with the two Schorndorfers. The Pfalz D3 will soon be built in the garage and in the room next to the store. This time, the two will receive additional wages for their work on top of sufficient funds to cover the cost of materials. Achim Engels mentions a sum that is somewhere between 70 and 90,000 marks. Whether the Fokker DR1 152-17 will ever take to the skies like the 320 aircraft of the same type built during the war is not certain. That will have to be decided by the museum management in Sinsheim, which, according to estimates by the two 19-year-olds from Schorndorf, would have to fork out around 10,000 marks. That's roughly how much the Federal Aviation Office's flight permit would cost, but, emphasize Achim Engels and Wolfgang Schuster, it could fly.